In a previous video we talked about how we can use functions to actually store procedures within MySQL, which we can then execute on the actual datasets and actually manipulate the datasets from within the functions. It's also possible to use triggers to do something similar to this, but triggers work in a slightly different way. Triggers are executed every time either data is inserted, updated or deleted from a specified table, a table that you specify. And so they're a great way to actually validate data as it's being inserted into your database for you. So to create a trigger, we just type create trigger and then the name of the trigger. And then we have an option to either specify that this trigger is going to be executed before or after data is entered into a database. In this case we're going to specify that it will be executed before the actual data is inserted into the database, but you could change this to after, depending on the actual insert validation that you want to execute. The next thing that you need to specify is when you want it to execute. So in this case we want to insert data which is going to be validated. Alternatives include update and delete. You obviously can't validate data when you're selecting data from a database, and so you can't create a trigger for it. So the next thing we're going to specify is when this is actually going to take place, or rather which table, and it's going to be our staff table in this case. And we're going to specify that it's going to happen for each row. And then you just type the actual commands that you want to actually perform. So in this case we're going to set the new department number to 20 whenever we're inserting new data into our database. This means that in essence we have an input validation which is going to always set our department number to department 20. You could of course combine various conditional statements, so you could say if the department number is not set, set it to department number 20. But just for simplicity we're just going to specify that it's always going to set the department number to 20. You'll also notice the new command here. This is how we actually access the data that we're inserting into the database. And we can use this to obviously perform validation, as I say, to ensure whether the department number is null, for example. And only if the department number is null, we would specify a department number. So you can perform validation that way. So if we now create this trigger, and then comment this out, we can first select all of the data from our database, or the staff table rather. And you can see that King is our last entrant here. So if we insert a new line now, all we've specified here is obviously the staff number and the staff surname. So if we execute this now, it's going to insert this new data. Our trigger is going to step in and it's going to set the department number for us. And then we're going to select all of the data again. So if we scroll down again, you can see that we've obviously got this new entrant here, Jones. He's not got a staff job title, his manager number is null, his hire date isn't set, his salary isn't set, his commission isn't set, but it has inserted this department number for us. And as you can see in our insert statements, we've obviously not done this manually, this is our trigger acting on our behalf. As I say, we wouldn't normally just override whatever the value is in our trigger like we've done in this case. We would perform some validation to check whether the department number is null to start with, and only overwrite the null value. If you wanted to do things like checking that department number actually existed, you would use a foreign key for this rather than an actual trigger. But triggers can be very handy when it comes to larger databases and you want to ensure that all of your developers who are using your database are going to actually use each of the fields correctly.